Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching a nice simple Photoshop technique to create something called an out of bounds image. What's an out of bounds image? Well, it's something like that really. It's a picture where it looks like an object is coming out of the frame. Now it looks quite complicated and it can be, but I'm going to show you a very simple, straightforward technique if you stick to the same formula. So let's get cracking. Right, let's come out of that. That's the final image. That's what we're going to end up with. But it all starts with an image like that, just an ordinary standard photograph. And what I want to do is to start by making a background, something that we're going to sit the picture on. So let's begin by getting rid of the padlock on the background layer, because we need to put a layer below. So I'm going to get the padlock, click on it, drag it, and drop it in the bin. Now I can click on the new layer icon right next to the bin, make a new layer, and put it below. Turn the car off and I'm ended up worse off than when I started. I've got no picture on screen whatsoever. It gets better, stick with it. So let's change the background. Let's go for a nice graduated background, corner to corner. Click on the colour. What colour shall I go for? I don't know. I think actually I'm going to go for blue. I think blue will go quite nicely against the yellow car. So let's have a dark blue for the foreground and we'll graduate that up to a lighter blue for the other end of the background. Get the graduated filter tool, put that across there, and there we go. Okay, so simple background, done, tick. Bring the car back. Now, the next thing to do is to cut the car out and make it look like it's floating on a piece of paper. Now, that's a two-step process. Step 1, make a piece of paper. Step 2, cut out the car. Now, the first bit's easier, so let's do that. Let's do the piece of paper. So first thing to do is to make a selection, and we'll use the rectangular marquee just to make a rough and ready rectangle over the image like that. Now I don't want a rectangular piece of paper, I want mine to look three-dimensional. I want it to look like it's bent in at the edges, give it some perspective. And for that I'm going to transform the selection. Yep, just the marching ants. So it's select and transform selection. Then right click inside the selection and a little secret list pops up and you have a list of things you can do to the selection, and one of them is perspective. Click on that and then drag a corner handle in and magically the other side follows suit, and we can do the same with the bottom like that. So we get this much more three-dimensional look, but only to the selection. Okay, click the tick when you're done and that makes your selection stick. Right, next thing to do is to make sure that you're working on the right layer, because I nearly wasn't there, I nearly made a mistake. Make sure you're working on the layer with your object, my car, and then simply click on the layer mask button, and that's going to get rid of pretty much the whole picture apart from the selection we just made. So that's the base of the image made, the piece of paper. The next bit's a bit more tricky. We're going to make the top bit, and that needs a more accurate selection. Right, it also needs another layer, oddly enough, as well. So let's just duplicate that layer up however you wish. Command or Control J will work. We'll right click on the layer mask that comes with it and choose Delete Layer Mask. And we're back where we started. So what have we been going for now? 3 and a bit minutes and we're right back where we began. That's the joy of Photoshop, isn't it, really? But we're getting closer to the end, believe me. Right, so a selection. Now there are many selection tools you could use. I'm just going to use the quick selection tool because, well, A, it's fairly quick and you don't want to sit here watching me make a long complicated selection, and this does the job. Now on your own images, of course, this part of the whole process is the bit that makes or breaks the effect. The more care you put into your selection at this point, the more accurate your image is going to look, the better your out of bounds effect will be. Now I'm just whizzing through this as fast as I can, and there's a little bit there maybe, and there's little bits you have to watch out for though. For example, anything there where you can see through. So for example here where there were windows, I can see the muddy background behind, but think about it, we made that graduated background a moment ago and that's what you should see through the windows. So I need to make sure those aren't part of my selection. So with the quick selection tool I just hold the Alt key and I can remove those areas from the selection like that, and there's a little bit there. Whoops, a little wrong there. We'll just add that bit back in. There we go. So if we can just tidy that up close enough for now, that'll do for what we want for this tutorial. and in there, and in there. Now, of course, I could go through and do every single little bit through the mesh of the windscreen, but you don't want to see that, and we don't really need to for the effect I'm after. One extra thing we can do, we can just take off the jagged edges and go to Select, Modify, and Feather, and we'll feather it. Well, it says 1 pixel there. Let's use 1 pixel. That's fine. 1 or 2 pixels. Just feather the edges of the selection, make them less rough and digital. Okay, now the fun bit. All we need to do now is click on the Layer Mask button once again, and it makes that out of bounds effect for us. Brilliant. Looks fantastic. Okay, so we're getting close to the end. A few things we can do just to tidy this up. Let's make this mud that's spinning off the back tyres, let's make that spin out of the frame as well. So we're going to get a paintbrush, and I'm going to get this nice little spattery brush here. This is what this one called. It's called Spatter 59. What a good name. 59 though is a little bit small. Let's make it a bit bigger. A few more pixels than that, 250. And I've got white as my foreground colour, and I'm just working on the layer mask, not the actual image, just the layer mask. And with a few clicks, I'll get some of the picture coming back through like that. Okay, let's make our brush a bit smaller, maybe drop the opacity down a little bit, something like that, and have some other bits coming up. So we get that effect where the mud is flying out the back and looking very much sort of three-dimensional, because it's going to add some depth over that side of the frame. Right, okay, so that's looking good. We'll fit that onto the screen. We need a border, really. We need a frame, something for this car to burst out of. Okay, so we'll make a new layer, and we need a selection. And the selection we need is that one we made earlier, that rectangular one. So the trick is, hold the Control key or the Command key on the Mac, and click on the layer mask for that selection, that rectangular one. Now, simply go up to, what do we go for? Edit and Stroke. Let's choose 40 pixels. Let's choose our border color as white. And we'll make sure it's on inside and click OK. That's going to put a border around the inside of that selection. It's going to make it look like there is a frame, a photo frame around the edge of the picture. We'll get rid of the selection, but you can probably see a small, minor, little problem. Yeah, the frame goes right across the car. But we've been working in layers. Now, the reason I'm doing this in layers is because it makes life easier and more controllable. So, all I need to do is move that layer with the frame underneath the top car, and boom, instantly it looks like it's in the correct way round, and no extra erasing, nothing complicated. It just works. Okay, good. Last thing we're going to do, a little extra three-dimensional tip, is we're going to lift the corners of our photo frame up, put a shadow underneath. So let's just select all of those layers, the top 3 layers, not the background, and we'll collapse them all down together. Layer, merge layers, or Control or Command E, and then we can use a bit of transform, but not ordinary transform. We're going to warp it. Yeah, I love a bit of warping. What great fun. So let's get the corners down here, and we'll warp those up. There's one, and we'll warp up the other one. There's 2. Okay, so that bends the corners up. But for that to look more three-dimensional, we've got to put a shadow underneath. So it's time for another layer. It needs to be underneath, so it needs to be underneath on the layers. And we'll make sure we have black. Grab a paintbrush. Better not use spatter. I think we better use an ordinary type paintbrush. And we'll just draw a nice straight line underneath there like that. Lovely. So we build that effect up, and it looks like it's floating. It's a bit heavy, so we can drop the opacity of that shadow down. Let's take it down 60-odd%. Something like that. And there you go. That's how you can take a straightforward picture and make it look like it's come out of bounds. Now, I'm Gavin Hoey. You can find out more about me on my website at www.gavtrain.com. Follow me on Twitter or keep up to date on Facebook. Thanks for watching.